Hello everyone, Leafread here. Today we have a really good book, the infamous Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Now, Brave New World, part of the triad of other dystopian books. Unlike 1984, however, which is more about information and linguistic control, Brave New World is a more kind of focused world on drugs, narcotics, and the biological dystopia that's been created. First off the bat, I love this book. This actually feels like a work of fiction rather than just a political, social commentary about what could happen or whatever. Unlike 1984, which I found its story to be very dry and bland and kind of whatever, this is really good. It follows the story of a couple characters, and it's actually fascinating that they're written well enough, but it also has commentary behind it. This is a fantastic book. So just right out the front, I would say I absolutely recommend it, and it's not very long at all. In fact, it's only what? Let me see here. The spacing is pretty decent. It's a couple 100 pages. I just realized there are no page numbers in this book. Am I going crazy? Huh. All right. That's odd. There are chapters. Okay, well, whatever. It's it is what it is. So what is Brave New World about? So I'll give you the basic world and lore understanding. And the first chapter actually lays this out very, very nicely. And the way they do it is very smart, where they have a bunch of kids on a field trip, and they are, how shall I say? They're on a field trip to this laboratory, and they're learning about things in the world. So through the child's eyes, we get instructed. And so the main difference in this world is that it's a, I think it takes place in England, but it's this hyper-industrialized society where they have these special factories which make humans. And it describes how it tiers the humans into different levels. So at the very top, they have alphas, then betas, gammas, and so on. And I think all the way down to epsilon. Anyway, so the alphas are given the best genetics, the best treatment. They're played lullabies, they're cared for, and also part of the child's upbringing, they'll have a, what do you call, like a little microphone that will play subliminal messages on loop saying like, you're the best, you can do anything, you can like go for whatever. And so then you have, for example, what's an example? So then the betas are, not given the best genetics, not given the best care, and they'll be told things like, they'll be given limericks or expressions that are just coded into them, and they don't understand why they exist. So I think, for example, one of them would be, 2 pairs of pants, one safe for a stitch. I don't remember exactly what it means, or what it was, but it's essentially the point was that they would rather repair a pair of pants than to buy a new one. They would rather save money and whatever than spend it on something new. And so they would be more conservative in that aspect, and they wouldn't be as attractive, and they would kind of be the sub workers. And then you go down through the list, and there's worse things like, they inject the lesser children or the lesser classes with poison, with alcohol, with things to dismantle the frontal lobe, essentially, and all the way down to the bottom rung, which are supposed to be the manual laborers who have like forcefully, intentionally given 80 IQs and sort of broken spines and bones and health issues, and have dark skin and all this stuff, and they're kind of treated as these as destined to be menial laborers, basically. And you think, well, okay, why are they doing this? And so apparently there's a world government, and they all decided that the best way to make the most stable society is to have specified class system, but not by profession or job, but by pure genetics and by pure conditioning as well. So, and it's very important that it's not just genetic, but it's also conditioning. That's also a large part of it, the message at play around. And I think also in the lower children's upbringing, they play things like car crashes and disruptive sounds to the baby when they're developing. So it's genetic and mimetic, if you will, as to how they shape these people and how they put them into different classes. And they're all grown and cloned in these laboratories, and they all run on a schedule or whatever. So that's the first thing it introduces to. The second thing it introduces you to is something frankly just weird, just bizarre and non-human, if I could say it. So they're talking about the sexual aspect of the society and what it is. And the idea is that because humans are made by the state, and the state acts like a family, basically. I mean, this is a communist's, wet dream, or a fascist's wet dream. Because humans are made by the state, there's no family unit. And it's funny because they even bring up the fact that the word mother, father, family, those are like curse words. Those are like dirty words. Instead of calling someone a bastard, you call them a father. That's just wild. But the other thing too is that because humans are grown and people don't need to have sex in order to reproduce, essentially the idea is that everyone is available all the time. There's no such thing as monogamy. It's all free love and hippies and whatever. The person has to consent though. It's not like you can go around raping people, but it's basically like if someone asks you to have sex with them and you say no, that's considered incredibly rude. Like, excuse me, I just asked you if I could have sex with you and you said no. What do you think? You think you belong to someone else? No, you belong to the state, and everyone has to share. I think there is like I'm not sure if it's a stipulation or something, but I think it was implied that usually only people within their own social class would get together. But I think the main character actually attracts. The main character is a beta male who attracts an alpha female. And I'm trying not to laugh because of stupid memes that relate to this in an eerie way. But she likes him, and she likes him more than the other people. And she has these ideas in his head like, oh, I only want to be with him. And the other girls are like, oh, how could you say that? That's so bad of you. Like, you need to go and have sex with random people. And the weird part is that this conditioning for non-exclusivity begins in like grade school. So children are running around naked, and they're encouraged to fondle each other, play with each other, and explore their sexuality from a very early age. And that kind of eliminates the idea of that you own your body and that you own the right what to do with your body, and you own the right to choose what other people can do with your body, what they inject into it, if they need to use you for the army, to die for the army. And I think it is written that you can't get pregnant because the only way to make more children is to through the labs and the factories. And they have this guy called Mustafa something, and he's like the Governor General of District 6, which is Great Britain and I think Western Europe. And there are like 10 or so like districts of the world or whatever. And so he's giving a speech about all of this stuff. And yeah, that's kind of how we start. And then we finally get introduced to our main characters who live in... Oh yeah, and it's funny, they make a lot of allusions to Henry Ford. And in the sense that, they want to create a Model T or a model human citizen, and they want to run the human civilization like a Ford factory where you have everything optimized and utilized, and the entire race is the entire civilization is run like a factory. It's really a weird, interesting thing where capitalism actually takes a kind of industrialized capitalism, kind of takes a social force, the main social force in that world, which is just crazy and fascinating. Here's a line that I actually forgot this part. Our Ford, or our Freud, as for some inscrutable reason he chose to call himself whenever he spoke of psychological matters, our Freud had been the first to reveal the appalling dangers of family life. The world was full of fathers, was therefore full of misery, full of mothers, therefore of every kind of perversion from sadism to chastity, full of brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, full of madness and suicide. Here it says, but everyone belongs to everyone else, he concluded, citing the hypnotic proverb. The students nodded emphatically, agreeing with the statement which upwards of 62,000 repetitions in the dark had made them accept. Not merely as true, but as axiomatic, self-evident, utterly indisputable. But one of the other main aspects of this society is a drug called Soma. And Soma is basically this cure-all sedative, this mega super drug. It's like morphine and weed and whatever, given into a little pill, and it's kind of distributed by the government. And that is your drug of choice when you want to chill out, when you're becoming essentially too aware of how really messed up everything is. And there are certain things like, if I read this correctly, like mandated orgies where you take this drug and then you all have sex together. Yeah. All crosses had their tops cut off and become T's. There is also a thing we used to call God. Oh, that's the other thing. So there's no religion in this world. There's the state is the God. The state is the religion. And that's going to become a very interesting point. So Ford has basically become their God. Oh yeah, so we're introduced to one of our first characters, Lenina. And Lenina is this alpha female, and she, is kind of, we get to see the female perspective of the society through her. And so her thing is that she has a crush on Bernard Marx, who is this beta factory worker, I believe. Yeah, so he's responsible for doing Gondel hormones, transfusion of young blood, magnesium salts, the genetic coding of the new generation. And so Lenina has a crush on him, and through their relationship, you get to see the dynamics of what their society is like and how messed up it is, and how she's really not supposed to be dating him. He's the wrong guy. He's like a lower class below her. Oh yeah, there's even, mulberry-colored beta minuses came and went among the crowd. The roof of the main building was alive with the aligning and departure of helicopters. My word, said Lenina, I'm glad I'm not a gamma. 10 minutes later, they were at Stoke Poges and had started their first round of obstacle golf. And yeah, there's all a bunch of sci-fi future sports and helicopters and technological wonders and all that jazz. Now here we go. They describe, he opened the door of his lockup, calling to a lounging couple of Delta Minuses, attendants to come and push his machine out onto the roof. The hangars were staffed by a single Bolkonsky group, and the men were twins, identically small, black, and hideous. Bernard gave his orders in the sharp, rather arrogant, and even offensive tone of one who does not feel himself too secure in his superiority. Bernard's physique was hardly better than that of an average gamma. He stood 8 centimeters short of his standard alpha height and was slender in proportion. Contact with members of the lower caste always reminded him painfully of this physical inadequacy. I am I, and wish I wasn't. His self-conscious was acute and distressing. Each time he found himself looking on the level instead of downward into a Delta's face, he felt humiliated. How bitterly he envied men like Henry Foster and Benito Hoover, men who never had to shout at an Exelon to get an order obeyed, men who took their position for granted, men who moved through the caste system as a fish through the water, so utterly at home to be unaware either of themselves or the benefits and comfortable element in which they had their being. So let's give you an idea of the social classes and whatnot. Oh yes, and so they. This is funny. They they call movies feelies, and so when you go there, it's not only you're experiencing visually what is on the movie screen, but apparently you also feel it somehow using drugs and different chemicals. You can smell, taste everything that you see on the screen, and usually most of these feelies are pornographic in nature. But what eventually happens is, and I forget exactly how, but Bernard and Lenina go on this expedition outside the city limits, and outside the city there's this kind of savage area where it's all wild and untamed, and there are these kind of native Indian looking people, and they kind of go to this village as, you know, like an expedition or whatever. And what they find is that when they get there, they find a man named John, and John has blonde hair and blue eyes, like one of the alphas back in their society. And they thought, well, that's odd. And so they inquire, who is this John character? And they said that his mother, Linda, was also blonde and blue eyes. And she essentially somehow found herself in this situation and in their company. You know, when she first came into contact with them, she, because of their culture, she would have sex with anyone she wanted. So she tried to take, you know, all the men that she wanted, and all the other women hated her and beat her up. Here's the crazy thing about this society is that they are the society that has religion. And in this society, they have two deities or two gods, and they're both on sticks, and one is called Pazuzu, the bird god, and the other one is called Jesus. So you have this totally messed up world where religion has totally been forgotten and it's considered a thing of savagery. And so John learned how to do things like read and write, and you know, how to do more advanced things than the other people in their society, but he's always been an outsider in the tribe because he looked different. His mother was immoral, and he you know, was always just bullied and never given the full rights to be a man. And so Bernard and Lenina take a great interest in this man, study him, and they decide to bring him back as like a kind of celebrity kind of guy. And they call him the educated savage. And as they're about to bring John to this new world, to their civilization, he says, "Oh, brave new world that has such people in it, let's start at once." "You have a most peculiar way of talking sometimes," said Bernard, staring at the young man in perplexed astonishment. "Anyhow, hadn't you better wait until you actually see the new world?" So there it is. The title of the book is the old world and the savage coming into this highly controlled and different area. It makes me wonder that maybe they probably get into specifics and I've forgotten it at this point, but the fact that the mother could be inseminated, and it turns out in a twist later that Linda, John's mother, is indeed from their society, and there's a bit of drama that she essentially was the dirty little secret of a certain high-ranking member, and he decided to get rid of her when she got pregnant suddenly, and she unfortunately survives. And there's this very kind of funny instance where they actually do find the father of John and bring him to him, and it's the director of one of the factories who is about to fire Bernard for his incompetence or his lackluster performance, and this fact he doesn't like him. And John kind of gets on the ground and says, "Oh, my beloved father." And everyone else in the factory finds this display, and this word father is so disgusting, and but said with such reverence and love, that they all burst out laughing, and it completely ruins the guy's reputation, and he's forced to resign after they find out, yes, this guy is indeed the father of a child. And so when John gets to this new society, it's very interesting. He has a hunger, a ravenous hunger for knowledge and learning. And so he starts reading Shakespeare and all these great works, and he becomes this kind of little celebrity that people want to come and see and say, oh, look at this savage who wants to be smart or whatever. This is a funny line. The scent organ was playing a delightful, refreshing, herbal, capriccio rippling arpeggios of thyme and lavender, of rosemary, basil, myrtle, tarragon, a series of daring modulations through the spice keys into ambergris, and a slow return through sandalwood, camphor, cedar, and new mown hay, with occasional subtle touches of a discord, a whiff of kidney pudding, and the faintest suspicion of pig's dung, back to the simple aromatics with which the piece began. It's a smell symphony. And so they bring John to one of these feely movies, and it's all about this kind of sexual pursuit slash, degradement, and she's eventually rescued, but of course it's a very much a highly hardcore pornographic movie. And this is John's reaction, the savage, and I don't think you ought to see things like that, he said. Things like what, John? Like this horrible film. Horrible? Lenina was genuinely astonished. But I thought it was lovely. It was base, he said indignantly. It was ignoble. She shook her head. I don't know what you mean. Why are you so queer? Why did he go out of his way to spoil things? So obviously John sees this vulgar display, and he's disgusted with it. And so John kind of becomes the normal person, who are us, and he's been brought into this society, this brave new world, and he's telling everyone how he feels, and that he essentially hates it and is disgusted with it and sees everything wrong, that everyone has been brainwashed, that is natural, because he's from the outside. And so in a way, it is right to call John a savage, because he becomes a anti-narrative figure. He starts hating the society, and just like the barbarians in Rome, he begins to want to destroy this entire society, not because it's powerful, but because it's wrong. And it's funny that Lenina wants to actually sleep with John, and he says, that's why. I want to do something first. I mean, I want to show that I am worthy of you. He says, to show how much I love you, Lenina. He almost brought out almost desperately. An emblem of the inner tide of startled elation. The blood rushed up into Lenina's cheeks. Do you mean it, John? But I hadn't meant to say so, cried the savage, clasping his hands in a kind of agony. Not until... Listen, Lenina. In Malpais, people get married. Get what? The irritation had begun to creep back into her voice. What was he talking about? For always. They made a promise to live together for always. What a horrible idea, Lenina was genuinely shocked. Outliving beauty's outward, with a mind that doth renew swifter than blood decays. What? It's like that in Shakespeare too. If thou dost break her virgin not before all sanctimonious ceremonies may be filled with the holy rite. For Ford's sake, John, talk sense. Anyway, this goes on for a long time, as you can see. And so there's this one scene where, Linda does actually come back with them to the society, but she ends up in hospital. She doesn't really go public, though. And eventually what happens is there's some horrible thing that happens, and she ends up passing away. And John is there when she does pass away. And it's this, it's a mourning moment. And of course, what he does is he loses himself. He starts crying. He drapes himself over her and starts, bewailing that she, has passed away. And while this is happening, there's a a band of school children coming along on a field trip, and they're all observing this and, paying attention and looking on in curiosity as if this is something unusual. And one of the nurses steps in and says, "Can't you behave?" she said in a low, angry voice. But looking around, she saw half a dozen twins who were already on their feet and advancing down the ward. The savage kept repeating God to himself. In the chaos of grief and remorse that filled his mind, it was the one articulate word, God. He whispered it aloud, God. What was he even saying? And so because she can't understand his connection to his mother, death has no real purpose, and they have these suicide things all over the place if you just want to die. And so basically, when he's crying, she doesn't understand the feeling and the attachment and the meaning of it. And so John feels like a total alien in this world where people don't even understand the relationship to a mother or a father or anyone who is important, because everyone's essentially created as a sort of equal, even though they're in this caste system. There are no personal relationships. And so here's an interesting thing, that they're meeting with Mustafa Mond, and they said, what happened when all of the citizens of a certain society were just all alphas? If you can make these alpha people with genetics and conditioning that are the best, why wouldn't you make everyone alpha? And so here's his little parable about that. Well, you can call it an experiment in rebottling if you like. It began in AF 473. The controllers had the island of Cyprus cleared out of its existing inhabitants and recolonized with a specially prepared batch of 22,000 alphas. All agricultural and industrial equipment was handed over to them, and they were left to manage their own affairs. The result exactly fulfilled all theoretical predictions. The land wasn't properly worked. There were strikes in all the factories. The laws were set at naught. Orders disobeyed. All the people detailed for a spell of low-grade work were perpetually intriguing for high-grade jobs. And all the people with high-grade jobs were counter-intriguing at all costs to stay where they were. Within 6 years, they were having a first-class civil war. When 19 out of 22,000 had been killed, the survivors unanimously petitioned the world controllers to resume the government of the island, which they did. Essentially that if alphas had to do menial labor, they would go insane. And of course, wherever the masses seized political power, it was happiness rather than truth and beauty that mattered. So this is funny. So Mustafa Mond, as he's being confronted by John says, so you destroyed art, science, and religion for happiness, but nothing greater and beyond, and nothing lower and downward. You've just created a simple, static existence of a state, but without ever improving or expanding, but always remaining on a baseline. And Mustafa Mond responds, yes, no, this is true. We have done all these things. And there was a thing called God at one point. And in his own personal book collection, he has the Bible of the Old and New Testament. He has The Imitation of Christ, The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James, and many more. And he said it's become his personal hobby or interest to understand how people thought and what religion and God actually was. But it's simply a personal hobby for the controller. He says, then you think there is no God? He says, no, I think there quite probably is one. Then why would you do this? Mustafa checked him, and he manifests himself in different ways to different men. In pre-modern times, he manifested himself as the being that's described in these books. Now, well, he manifests himself as absence, as though he weren't there at all. That's your fault, John said. Call it the fault of civilization. Anyway, they go through many other discussions about philosophy, religion, art, what is actually worth living and fighting for and dying for, and what's worth actually living in a changeable world where you can fail rather than unchanging one where the possibility of failure is equal to the possibility of success at zero. And the final scene of this book is incredible. It is incredibly profound and violent and fascinating, that the climax of this story is apparently John leaves the society realizing how distorted it all is. He could have stayed there as a celebrity or whatever, but he decides to leave and live and grow a garden around a lighthouse outside of the city. And this last chapter is honestly beautiful. It is beautifully written, where he rejects everything. He grows out a beard. He becomes this madman almost. And in his solitude, much like the old priests or saints of the early church who would go off into the wilderness, they drew more and more attention. People wanted to know, why would you go out into the wilderness to live alone when you have all the luxuries around you? And he becomes more of a celebrity, and there's more people who come to see him and paparazzi, and it escalates to a point where finally there's a standoff, and it finally ends in this climax where this reporter, I believe, I don't think it's Lenina, there's a woman who approaches him, and they've all been pestering him and bugging him, saying, why are you doing this? And eventually he breaks down in a fit of rage and basically assaults her. And it's not exactly clear how bad it gets, but basically all of the people watching this are so drugged up, so far removed from the idea of pain or love or anything good or evil, that they end up cheering him on in a pure state of total hedonistic pleasure while he goes absolutely mad. And after he realizes what he's done to this woman, his guilt is so deep and so powerful that at the end of the book they come to find him in the lighthouse and he's hanged himself. And that is Brave New World. Anyway, this is a fantastic book, a really interesting commentary on the biological state, if you will, and just such a passionate and well-written book. I enjoyed this a lot more than 1984. This was a lot more interesting, and because it plays with the dynamics of civilization and naturalism, and what is civilized, what is natural, what is nurtured, what is actually barbaric. And what is it to be human? What is it to be a science experiment? Anyway, great book. Definitely recommend it. And see you guys later. Bye. And always keep reading.